All right. Hey, and welcome to the channel again. So Jennifer is back on. You were actually my first guest. Now you're the second guest as well. So it means you got gold and silver without even have to run. Just saying. So yeah, I made a video recently about jobs that you can do straight after graduating from psychology degree. And this one, I guess, just dives into a lot of depth about what it is to be a research assistant, as well as a research practitioner. So over to Jennifer. And I guess my first question would be, what is it like? What do you do on a sort of day-to-day basis?
Well, I think a lot of people have the misconception about what working in research could be. So there are some parts of research where you are completely, totally involved in the process of, applying for funding and helping set it up and running it and analysing the data and all of that. But the work I do as a research practitioner, it's within an NHS trust. So it's a research team, and people who have got research ideas come to us to run their research. So that process involves promoting the research, screening for eligible participants, approaching people, consenting, collecting data, sometimes a bit of data entry, and things like that. So it's not so much involved in the other part of research further on. It's more about the process of actually making the research happen. So I guess a normal day for me, maybe it might be easier to distinguish between a research assistant and a research practitioner, because when I first started, I was a research assistant. So I basically helped out in a bunch of different studies in terms of recruitment and approaching people and data collecting. So that's more, for research assistant, you're more likely to work in a bunch of different studies, helping out here and there, but you're not leading on that. You're not the person who organises the process. Whereas a research practitioner, you're more involved from the get-go. So things like putting together a recruitment plan and helping to set up the study and making sure all the documents are in place and everyone who's working on it has been delegated tasks, and you just take more of a lead on it basically, but you also still do the other stuff of finding people, promoting, approaching, collecting data, consenting. So research practitioner is just more of a lead role in it. So I don't know if that answers the question really, but that's the main difference between the two. But they're very similar and they all work together all the time pretty much. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're just passing the mic along for slightly better audio. So I think, research assistant, you start at band 4 usually, yes, I think, and then research practitioner is band 5.
Yeah, and then you get senior research practitioner. Well, that's how it was for my trust anyway, and that's a band 6. And the difference there is that you hold like supervision. You can do supervision and you can supervise other people, whereas I can't do that because I'm not a senior research practitioner. So I think that is the main difference. Band 6 is they supervise people really. And I don't do that. Yeah.
And just to go back to the sort of the band for research assistant, maybe talk us through a sort of an average day. I know it might be difficult to say an average day, and obviously it would depend on which kind of team and service you work in. So some of the jobs or the roles that you do as a research assistant will be quite similar, but then it depends on what you do exactly. But you get into the office at 9 a.m. What kind of day-to-day task that you would do?
Okay, I can definitely do that. So normally you come in and make a cup of tea, whatever. Okay, I'm joking. But you check your emails, see what needs doing. But normally a day-to-day, you might have a research visit, and that is when it could be a baseline, which is where you're meeting someone for the first time, and you're explaining the study to them, and you're consenting them, and basically the first ever visit this person has. Or it could be a follow-up where this person's already taken part, and you're meeting them after a few months just to collect follow-up data. So that could be something that you might have in a day. You could also, I always have time, especially in the study I work on, just allocated to just sitting down and screening. Oh my gosh, I think for me a big part of it is screening and trying to find people who want to take part. So that involves, you might ask a community mental health team for a caseload of people that they're seeing, and you sit through and sift through them and match them up, or their symptoms against the exclusion or inclusion and the inclusion and exclusion criteria of the study, just to make sure that on paper this person is suitable to take part. Also, I do a lot of as well of sitting down and contacting people and calling them or sending out letters, inviting them to take part, or answering queries they might have in relation to what you've sent them, just making sure whether or not this is for them. Also research promotion for me as well, a lot of sort of getting the word out there and building links and maintaining relationships to other people within the trust, because you need to get other people on board, especially if you're working with people. These people, the participants often have like a care coordinator who you need to get on side, because what we get a lot is that sort of like gatekeeping, where you approach someone or you talk to a clinician about it and they immediately say, no, this is not for them, they won't be suitable. But a lot of it is trying to break that sort of barrier of like, actually research is for everyone. I'm not asking whether or not they want to take part. Is there any reason why I shouldn't ask them if they want to take part? So they have that decision to make whether or not this is something for them. It's not up to you to say that. Of course, if they're really poorly and it's not the right time, completely understand. But yeah, it's about a lot of the work we do is research promotion and just making sure that people know that we're there. I think for ages people didn't really know what our team did or that we existed, but a lot has changed over the years of us just making use of the online space and publicising what we're doing and getting more people on board. And another thing we did was like research champions, so clinicians who sort of sign up to hear more about what we're doing, and we give them opportunities to get more involved in research, training opportunities, things like that. So yeah, research promotion is a big part of the day-to-day work. Data entry as well, that's something that it depends on the study. A lot of the studies I worked on, I didn't have to do that. We just sort of sent it off to the lead team that were handling it. But the one that I spent a lot of time working now as a research practitioner, I did a lot of data entry. And that can be quite boring sometimes because you just sit there for hours and it's putting it all very accurately. But if you put some music on or in your earphones or listen to a podcast as you're doing it, it does make it a bit more fun and time does fly by. So yeah, that's another thing. I think a lot of research, to be honest, is administrative tasks. There's a lot of making sure that things are where they're supposed to be and all records are up to date, because a lot of these are like, if someone asks for it, it has to be there, like in terms of legality and ethics. So you have to just make sure that everything you do is documented for future reference. So there is a lot of like administrative tasks involved, but also a lot of actually talking to people and engaging with them, as well as the wider, I guess, mental health trust or whatever trust you work for. But I'm very aware of that as well. Like what I do is different to what other people might do in terms of research, because I feel like sometimes when you work for a university and you're doing research for a university, you might get more involved in the process of analysing data and writing up data or getting things ready for publication or applying for funding. So yeah, it just depends on what you're going for. So be sure of what actually you're getting yourself into, because a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that we do all of that, and we have to sort of tell them that it's quite separate what we do and what your idea of research might be. So yeah, it does vary. Yeah,
so I guess another good thing to keep in mind is that if you don't like stats and you're not really comfortable with analysis, that's not necessarily a part of your job.
Yeah, exactly. Really, it's not. It's not part of my job. So you don't need to worry about that. Yeah.
But then if it is your kind of thing, then obviously you can find a job that has that aspect. But if you just read the job description, it will tell you if you have to do analysis or not, or anything else really. So next question is, you kind of touched upon it a little bit, but in terms of just the ups and downs of the job, we said data entry can be a little bit boring, but any more insights of highlights and sort of the weaker points?
Yeah, of course. I think one of the highlights would be definitely in terms of research, we are really, really privileged. Like if I compare what the opportunities our team gets and compared to other teams, like the community mental health teams, we just have a lot of opportunities coming through. Like a lot of opportunities to get some extra money to maybe do a little project that you might be interested in, or the opportunity to go to like interesting talks or training, and loads of CPD opportunities. And also working on research, you sort of get an idea of like the groundbreaking things that are happening before it's fully out there. So I think that's pretty cool. And in terms of working with people, especially the work I did, which is working with psychosis population, the downside was a lot of people just didn't want to hear it because of their presentation, their symptoms, and I'm coming to them, talking to them, and that paranoia of like, who are you? You know, where did you get my information from? Like, sometimes you don't mean to, but even just talking to someone about approaching someone new or approaching them can be quite distressing because they just worry about it so much. So it's not something I would. Yeah, it's quite sad when that happens because you're trying to help and you have this idea that might be potentially beneficial to them, but at the same time you have to respect that it might not be the right time for them yet or they might not be in the right space of mind to do something like that, which is completely understandable. But on the other side, you get people who are really like quite marginalized and have never been approached before and they've never been given such an opportunity, and when you come across them, they're just so grateful and so happy to be asked and to be offered this opportunity. And it's really great because it's like, oh my god, yes, someone who is really interested, and you hope that they get the intervention and you hope that it makes a difference for them. But you know, I don't know what they're randomized to. But even just the fact that I get to sit down with people for sometimes up to 2 hours, just talking to them and asking them sometimes these quite in-depth questions and getting an idea of what it's like for them to live with their condition. That's really humbling, and it's quite a privilege as well because just someone is letting you into their life and you get to just know all these things about them. And yeah, it's just sitting down and talking to someone, but it's really rewarding. You can see how much it means to them that someone is giving them that time and just to sit and listen to what they have to say. I think that's definitely a highlight for me. I really enjoy doing that. So yeah, but like you said, data entry can be quite boring. Having to sort of trying to break down those gatekeeping walls of convincing people why research is a good idea. It's not always fun, but when you get someone on board, that's also really great because it's like, yes, one less wall I have to like try and break down. But overall, it's been a really positive experience, like in terms of the types of opportunities that you might get. So, and another thing, if you do get those opportunities, literally just grab it by both hands, just anything that comes your way, because because you just don't know when it's going to come again. So ups and downs, but mostly more pros than cons, I'd say, 100%.
Yeah, I guess that's with any job. There'll be kind of the good parts and slightly more difficult or stressful parts. So next question I wanted to ask you was really about reflections on the job, because it's a big buzzword in psychology, right? Yeah. It's not enough just to do something because you don't know what you got out of it. You really need to think and take a pause and think, okay, what did I get out of this experience that I just had? Especially when it comes to applying for the doctorate or any application, really, you need to not just list what you did, but say how it helps you to be a better clinician, better healthcare professional. And you just got onto the doctorate and you're going to start it soon-ish. So I guess how did it help you, how did it help you in your doctorate, and what are your kind of reflections of what you actually learned and what was good about it?
I think a big part of what I learned was because I had a lot of patient or service user contact, that sort of being able to read the room or just understand the person that you're talking to better, building rapport, that's a big part of like therapeutic working. So being able to sit with someone and just make that, even though it could be quite boring, but make it a very pleasant and meaningful experience for them. That's a big thing that I took out of it. But also in terms of like the nitty-gritty day-to-day working, is a big part of research is being organized. Like because everything more or less has to work like clockwork, and you have to plan sometimes months in advance, make sure that the things that you need when this follow-up happens or when this assessment happens, it's all in place, so you're not sort of like floundering around when the day arrives because you haven't thought ahead. So planning ahead, organising, that's something I really, really developed working in research and leading on a research delivery sort of project. And also just just thinking back when I joined the team, it was the first time working in like a proper like office-based job, and I was so terrified. I was honestly just the mere act of picking up the phone, like answering the phone, I hated it so much. Like I would always worry that, oh my gosh, what if I don't know the answer, or what if someone's listening and they think, oh my God, what's she saying? That's not what you're supposed to be doing. It really took me months to be able to feel comfortable enough to pick up the phone and answer a question. But now it's like my bread and butter. I can pick up the phone and talk to someone I've never met before, and I still get a bit stressed about it, but you just get on with it and it's not that big of a deal anymore. So that's just a little bit of that. Is a very useful skill that I'll be taking away from it, is just talking on phones. It was a big deal for me, and it really was. So what else? I think rapport building really is something massively I took away from it. Being able to sit with someone who can be quite distressed sometimes, because sometimes some questions I ask can be quite personal. And, how do you deal with that if someone's getting quite upset? Like, how do you handle that? How do you make sure that, they don't leave the experience feeling really, really, like, in a worse condition or in a worse position than when they first joined? So, I think, that's definitely a big part of something I took away from working in research. And also just going for opportunities, things like when funding opportunities came or this training thing came up, usually I'd think, oh no, I don't think it's for me. But you never know until you try, like actually just going for it and giving it what you got, and if you don't get it, that's fine. It's an experience. Just the process of applying for something or putting an idea together and sending it off or proposing something is a learning experience. So that's something I took away, just being a bit braver to put my ideas out there and see what comes out of it. So I think those are the main things I gained. Yeah.
Cool. And just to finish off, then the last question, I guess, any tips for people applying? Before, I don't know, the application process, or any tips at all that you think might be helpful, or that might have been helpful to you actually to know about before you applied yourself.
Okay. So like applying for a research job or for the doctorate? Research, okay. Well, I was saying to Julia, I recently was on the panel I was recently on the panel interviewing for my replacement, because I have left the role that I'm working in because I'll be starting a doctorate soon. And I think a big thing is, please read the job description of what you're going for. Like, sit down and pour through it. Don't have like an idea of what the job is going to be. Actually read it and see what they tell you what the role involves, because we have had a few people who just didn't really actually know what the job was about, and they came in talking about what they think it is about, and it was very obvious that they don't actually know what they applied for. So I think that's a big tip, just know what the job involves. Another tip is, in terms of research is pretty much the way to think about it. It's a project. Working in research is more similar to project management, because there is a start point and there's an end point. So think about the skills that comes with being able to run a project. So things like being organized, multitasking, working within MDT situations, because you'll be communicating with different various stakeholders. So what skills do you have? Can you show times that you've been able to demonstrate that? Also processes that are linked to research, so things like consenting. How do you know that someone's got capacity? What happens when capacity changes? Like, just things around that, and like confidentiality, what you do protecting people's data, good clinical practice. If you can read up on that, you would get trained on good good clinical practice, but if you could have a read of that, that would be really helpful. And just think of good questions as well to ask. That makes a really big difference. If you have like a stunning question at the end to ask your panel, that's always that can actually leave a really good impression. Even if you don't have it, just think of something. What else? Yeah, you also have to show that you're not just there to like gain experience that will help you for your doctorate. Like, why is this role important to you? You know, what do you bring to the role and what do you hope to gain from it too? Because it's quite, when you talk to people who are clearly very interested in the area, it shows. You can see that they want it and you can see what it means to them. So if you can come across in that way, I think, and also be really authentic about it, that is always a massive bonus. Yeah, and practice. If you can get like someone to practice interviewing with, I think that also is really helpful, because interviews are really, really nerve-wracking. But I think the more you sort of simulate what an interview would be like, and you're comfortable to talk in such a setting, I think it would help. It would make things easier for when you're having a real interview. So get people to ask you random questions. Maybe record yourself answering, potential questions. Look back, see what you come across as, and yeah, I think it's a great way to sort of build confidence in terms of that. I think those are my top tips. Yeah.
When you were just saying that, I imagine like giving your housemates like a list of questions and like, ask me when I'm least expect it. So you're like, you're on your way to the loo or something, like, why is consent important? How would you gain consent? Probably, wow, yeah. Research mode. Anyway, probably not a good tip, but yeah, just to be aware of the questions. But actually, just one more question I thought about, because you were actually interviewing people for your job. Were there any questions that you think were sort of generic questions, maybe not specific to your study, but generic questions that you think might come up for people in an interview that might be worth knowing about? So I guess consent, how would you get consent from people? I think is one that could come up, but any others you can think of?
Yeah, so things like, safety, like research you do. Sometimes you can do home visits, because we try to make things as accessible to as many people as possible. So sometimes you might need to go to someone's home to like do an assessment. So things like lone working policies, what do you do to keep yourself safe? Things like that. We're really like risk assessments. We're really big on that, and a lot of trust. Every trust should have a lone working policy. So if you could, something around that. What else? And also know about the trust, because they might ask you, a standard question might be like, oh, what do you know about the trust and why would you want to work for us? Or also most importantly, why research? What skills do you have that would make you good to work in research? So yeah, you should have that question. If someone ever asks you that, you should be able to give a solid answer to it. And also the skills element. What skills do you have that would make you good for this? There's always sort of like tell me about a time when this happened or this happened and what did you do? So those sort of scenarios are also good to brush up on. But yeah, look at the trust that you're going for, understand what they do, look at the research team, understand how they work and what they do, think about why you research and what would make you good for it, policies around research, things like consenting, capacity, keeping yourself safe. Yeah, most of the questions, to be honest, are quite generic. They're not like, it might vary, but it's usually, because even if you're working in the research team and you're allocated a study, more often than not, you will also be helping out on various other studies. So, yeah, they'll be quite generic, really. Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you so much. I'm hoping you found it useful, especially if you are applying for a research assistant position. Then best of luck with it. And thanks, Jennifer, again for all your wisdom. And thank you for finding this awesome background, which I cannot get over. And look at the smiley faces. Like, there's a flower with a smiley face. There's a cloud with a smiley face. And the sun is shining.
Today. I don't understand how lucky we got, but yeah, we got there.
All right. Thank you again, and yeah.
That was good. I thought that was good.
I feel like it always goes like really quick.